it's thinking that goes beyond the surface. It gets beyond the obvious. And it's the ability to be aware of that your thinking might be characterized by received notions. The world doesn't fit easily into either-or patterns. One of the standing jokes in my classes is that the national pastime is not baseball, but dichotomizing, that Americans love to put things in either-or categories. You know, it's conservative, liberal, Republican, Democrat, American League, National League, you know. But most of the things that kids write about, that most of the issues that we think about and explore in higher education are far more complicated than that. They can't be boiled down to either-or propositions. And so for me, critical thinking is the ability to get beyond those sort of easy formulations that are kind of handed to us by the culture, and to get beyond the surface, to question what looks like the norm, you know, what looks like the natural state of being. I think the constant practice of doing that, of sort of holding off judgment if someone poses a question, or if a text poses a question that students want to slip into an easy either-or answer to. That constant practice helps communicate to students that critical thinking is more than just sort of accepting what you see at first glance. And there are a whole number of strategies that you can employ, but I think they have to be done over time. And for me, they tend to be writing and reading activities, very often collaborative, small groups, partners. Usually I give students opportunities to do those activities in small groups, and then we come together as a class, share what we've found, pose questions, and then brainstorm together. So it's not one set of strategies, it's really the repetition of a whole variety of them that we do class after class throughout the semester. For me, the best answer to that question is to create a classroom in which the activities and the assignments that I give to students are such that they have a way into them. They look generic on the surface, but kids can come in at whatever level they happen to be at. So there has to be some flexibility there. It's kind of a, you know, it's kind of a one-to-one thing. I work in a small setting with 25 or so students, and they often do small group work, but I meet with my students 2 or 3 times during the semester individually. Those conferences give me opportunities to work closely with students and help identify where students might not be up to par, or those students who seem to be ahead of the curve, whom I can challenge a little bit more. And also, you know, writing, in some sense, writing instruction is inherently individualized, so that in my commentary on students, not just on their final papers, but on the drafts that they create, I have opportunities to work with students. I can really push kids that need to be pushed. I can back off with kids that are struggling and provide a little bit more support. I think the writing classroom, a process-oriented approach, offers instructors all sorts of opportunity to do that. Yeah, 3 things, I think. The first is scaffolding, the second is modeling, and the third is practice. Students often are able to do a certain kind of challenging intellectual task if you help them move to that level on a step-by-step process. That's scaffolding. You hear that term a lot in K-12 education, a little bit less so, I think, in higher ed, and especially in the writing classroom. But so, for example, if you want students to learn something about how to make a deductive argument, or how to use deductive reasoning in argumentation. Most of them can get there, but it isn't, you know, it's a big leap for many of them to sort of start where they are and then just make a deductive argument. So you can set up activities or assignments in such a way that they practice some of the intellectual operations that they need to do in order to make a deductive argument. Understand what deductive reasoning is. You know, start with a principle and have them identify what does that look like, and then how can we reason from that principle, for example. So scaffolding is really important. And the same is true with things that we might take for granted in academic writing, like how to support a claim, or what constitutes an appropriate claim. In writing 10 core concepts, one of those 10 core concepts is that writers have to support what they say. They have to back up what they say. That's an absolutely fundamental principle in effective academic writing. There's no genre or discipline in higher ed that doesn't have some version of supporting your claim. But many kids come out of high school not really knowing what that is because they haven't engaged in that kind of intellectual work. So you can work with them to scaffold that kind of activity over time, both in class and outside of class. Modeling is really important. You say to a student, well, here's an appropriate claim, or that's not an appropriate claim. How do they know what an appropriate claim is? Showing them how to do that, or back to my example about deductive reasoning, show them what it looks like to state a principle and then work from that principle to come to some logical conclusion about some argument or problem or question.